Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review. This episode was recorded on Monday, August 2nd, 2021. I'm Asbed Bedrossian, and along with Hovik Manucharyan, this week we're going to talk about the following major topics: continued instability along the Armenia-Azerbaijan borders, National Assembly Commission on the 40-40 War, and the first session of the 8th sitting of the Parliament.
And to talk about these issues, we have with us Asbed Kotchikian, who is Associate Professor for Political Science and International Relations at the American University of Armenia, and Benyamin Poghosyan, who is Chairman of the Yerevan-based think tank, Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies. He was Deputy Director for Institute for National Strategic Studies at the Ministry of Defense in 2010 to 2016, and Vice President for Research at the National Defense Research University from 2016 to 2019. Hello and welcome, everyone.
Hello, Hovik. Hello, Asbed. Hello, Benyamin.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
Hello, everyone.
All right, welcome. This is your first time, Benjamin. Thank you for joining us. So last week, there was continued instability and open fighting almost all around Armenia's borders with Azerbaijan. The most violent incident in Gyeğarkunik, near Verin Shozha, on Monday, July 28th, where the Armenian side had 3 deaths and several wounded. The week continued with news about shootings in Syunik and on the border with Nakhichevan, specifically Yeras. Let's begin with the incident on Monday. Specifically, it was one of the most violent incidents since the November 9 ceasefire. And after the deaths in Gyeğarkunik, what interested me was that the Ministry of Defense announced that the incident was triggered by upcoming negotiations in Moscow between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia, and that the Ministry of Defense was participating. And I guess in order to exert pressure on Armenia, Azerbaijan is alleged to have, triggered this fighting. So that interested me. Asbed Kotchikian, I wanted to start with you and ask, why is it that only after this fatal incident, the ministry felt the need to disclose the negotiations in Moscow? What are the negotiations about? Why is the MOD involved and not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for instance?
Well, Hovik, let me start with the second part of the question. Whenever there are negotiations, unannounced, secret, or confidential, we have to also make the distinction among these, right? Secret negotiations or confidential negotiations and so on. I'm not sure if this is a secret negotiation. It might be confidential negotiation. But in different negotiations, you end up having different elements of 2 countries or many countries, right? If it's an issue related to military-related issues, then obviously you end up having the Ministry of Defense's representatives from Ministry of Defense involved in that. Now, my sense about this is that the way that the media in Armenia also has been highlighting about it is that there has been a secret negotiations and we just found out about it. I think that's not the case. I think probably the negotiations have been ongoing, and the alleged name dropping of that Minister of Defense saying that, we were going to have negotiations in Moscow and Azerbaijan has preempted that, is actually a manifestation or attempt by the Armenian side to say that, listen, well, there is a goodwill on our end. We're trying to have negotiations, and probably the negotiation is about the border, overall Armenia-Azerbaijan border rather than just Karabakh. And, this is something that recently, even before the incident, Sergei Shoigu actually met with the Armenian representative defense, Minister of Defense and so on. And it was probably there's a lot of chatter going on, right, these days about whether Armenia is going to invite Russian peacekeepers or Russian soldiers to man the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So I personally won't read too much into that name dropping of sorts of the Minister of Defense saying that this is ahead of the negotiations and so on. I think it's just a manifestation of them showing that we have goodwill. Look, we're going to Moscow and negotiating with Azerbaijan under Russia's auspices, but then those Azerbaijanis are really, party poopers.
So you said it's about specifically the Armenian-Azerbaijani border, and I guess, but given that it's specifically focused with the Ministry of Defense, do you think it's related to the demarcation and delimitation, or what could, what do you think could be?
That's the beauty of these confidential meetings, right? The agenda, and
Yes.
We've been witnessing this for the last 9 months, since November 9th. right? There are a lot of negotiations, a lot of talks, and they are not secret. So, or probably there are secret negotiations or discussions going on as well. But more often than not, the content of the negotiations, be that between Armenia-Azerbaijan, among Armenia-Azerbaijan and Russia, or bilaterally between Russia and Armenia or Azerbaijan, are not disclosed or are disclosed partially. So when you have such a situation, and the fact that the Russian official spokespeople have negated the fact that there is any discussion going on about putting Russian soldiers on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, of course, my speculation and extrapolation would be that this is about Karabakh, issues related to Karabakh security and peacekeepers there. But why not also the Russians pushing their own agenda or flexing their own muscles to come
Right.
up with a MO to solve the issues of border demarcation?
Benjamin, let me ask you then to comment on the same question. And also, before that though, I'd like to also make note of the pictures that I saw, for instance, of our position that was shelled by Azerbaijanis, where 3 of the deaths occurred, seemed to show still very poor conditions. Specifically, we saw a tent without any sort of fortification. I saw a trench dugout that was going up into the waist of the soldiers, and this was actually footage from the I believe Zinuj program, so just the government itself. And only one side of the trench had additional, what do you call it?
Sandbags, fortifications.
And these soldiers apparently died from grenade launchers or mortars, I believe, yes. Benjamin, given your experience, defense issues and so forth, 9 months after the war, is the army really doing all it can to protect the border and our soldiers?
Okay, I will start from this last question. For me, it's clear, and it's also was officially confirmed, at least at the beginning of May, when Azerbaijani troops entered the Sunni province and penetrated for 3 or 4 kilometers without any resistance and without even single bullet shot. The Armenian authorities confirmed that, unfortunately, at least at the beginning of May, the newly emerged border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and here we are speaking about the border for more than 500 kilometers, then part of this border is not only ill-equipped, but part of this border are not protected at all, because this was an official explanation why there was no resistance when Azerbaijani army penetrated in 2 directions into sovereign Armenian territory, or at least what we in Armenia and our government believes is a sovereign Armenian territory. I mean, in a Sunni province around the Black Lake, so-called Black Lake, and also in Kielarkuni province near the villages of Kut and also Verinchoza. So the fact is that, unfortunately, at least at the beginning of May, some part of the Armenia-Azerbaijan borders were totally defenseless. Now we are speaking about badly equipped trenches or tents, but we cannot be sure that the entire border is at least protected by these badly equipped tents or trenches. So I cannot exclude that some parts of the border are still free, and if there will be a wish from Azerbaijani side, they may simply penetrate again without any resistance. So this is an actual reality. Of course, we may discuss why after 8 months after the end of the war, still this part of the borders are not protected. But this is another discussion, I believe. Regarding your first question, what kind of negotiations should take place or what were taking place in Moscow? I don't think that Azerbaijan is negotiating anything about Nagorno-Karabakh with Armenia. Azerbaijan's position is very clear that there is no Nagorno-Karabakh issue, and Azerbaijan is not going to discuss this issue with anybody except Russia. And why except Russia? Because Azerbaijan is telling that we have temporary located Russian peacekeepers in our territory, Karabakh, which is part of Azerbaijan, from Azerbaijani point of view. So, okay, we will discuss these issues with Russian counterparts regarding the duration of peacekeepers, the mandate of peacekeepers, etc., etc. But Azerbaijan's position is clear that we are not going to discuss anything about Nagorno-Karabakh, neither with Armenia nor with OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs or within any other format. So I don't believe that negotiations in Moscow, which were scheduled to take place, they were scheduled to be focused on Nagorno-Karabakh. Most probably, this was ongoing negotiations, and here I fully agree with Asbed that In the last 8 months, we have a lot of negotiations classified, and I don't exclude that also partly secret negotiations, but mostly about Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, about the issues of border delimitation and demarcation, and also about the issues of restoration of communications and giving Azerbaijan railway and highways to be connected with Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, providing some routes for Armenia to be connected with Iran via Nakhchivan, and also presumably with Russia via Azerbaijan. So I believe that the negotiations are on the way even now, but they are mostly focused or purely focused on Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, because again, I don't believe that Azerbaijan will discuss anything about Nagorno-Karabakh with Armenia.
Right.
And Benjamin, I would like to also get your point on this. Slipped my mind earlier is that I think this border sort of infiltrations and so on, these are just basically Azerbaijan maximizing its negotiation position, or it's putting pressure on Armenia on so many other issues that is trivial for them. It's not as important, so that it would divert attention from other issues that is more important for them. In other words, okay, so we'll stop our border infiltration if you do this. For instance, an issue of corridor or the issue of passage to between Nakhichevan and so on and so forth. And I think this is the more proactive component. I don't know, at least that's my reading of this border sort of infringements.
I believe you are right, at least for short-term perspective. I would
Mm-hmm.
even call it some coercive diplomacy, and
Mm-hmm.
Azerbaijan deploys tools of coercive diplomacy in putting pressure on Armenia to take concessions or agreements for two issues very important for them from my point of view. First, to force Armenia to recognize that what was Soviet Azerbaijan is now the Republic of Azerbaijan, like to recognize the territorial integrity of current Azerbaijan or Republic of Azerbaijan within the borders of Soviet Azerbaijan, which
Right.
automatically means that Armenia is recognizing Artsakh as a part of current Azerbaijan, because Nagorno-Karabakh
Exactly.
Autonomous Oblast or region was a part of Soviet Azerbaijan. Plus, Azerbaijan in that case will receive a legal right to demand the concessions regarding the so-called enclaves. I mean the
Mm-hmm.
Tigranashen village in Ararat province and also several villages in Taush province. Or at least Azerbaijan may use this as a bargaining chip, telling that, okay, I am not going to demand your withdrawal from Tigranashen, but please give me that or this. So for short-term
Right.
perspective, I fully agree. This is a coercive diplomacy, and one also interesting remark, because of this total constant pressure against our borders, starting from Gerarkunik and then into Ararat provinces, we simply starting to forget about Artsakh or about Nagorno-Karabakh. I mean Armenian internal discourse or political discourse, because 99% of people, experts in interviews, whatever else, is going on about Republic of Armenian territory, how we are going to defend
Mm-hmm.
Republic of Armenian territory from Azerbaijani attacks, how we are going to deter Azerbaijan's actions against Republic of Armenia, but nothing is discussed about the future of Nagorno-Karabakh, what will be there, how we are going to prevent the possible exodus of Armenians from there, even if Russian troops are there. And
Right.
the most important question, what will happen with Artsakh and with Armenians in Artsakh if for whatever reasons and whenever Russian troops will decide to leave Artsakh. So, frankly speaking, political and expert circles of Armenia in last 1 or 2 months, they have, if not completely, but almost completely, they have forgotten about Artsakh. And now they all have focused their
Exactly.
attention on Armenian borders and etc. etc. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe this is also was one of the intention of Azerbaijan, like to tell us, hi guys, you should forget about Artsakh, because now you should think about Yeras,
Your
about
own border,
Ararat,
right?
about yes, about Gerar Kunik, about Taus. So okay, if you have problems in Yeras, which is only 57 kilometers from Yerevan, there is no sense to speak about or think about Artsakh.
Yeah, the priorities have shifted. The priorities shift. I mean, they
Yes,
force the agenda. And by the way, I have to mention that as at a personal level, I have been to that area, Geralkunik region, in that Verin Shorja region. And one of the things I keep remembering or thinking these days is that a lot of people there who live there are actually refugees from the First Karabakh War, from Azerbaijan, from Baku, especially. I have talked with many, many people, and I cannot stop but thinking how those people are faring. A lot of the former refugees or refugees from Armenian refugees from Azerbaijan who were resettled there, that area. So that's also something just to to keep in mind to personalize, let's say, what's happening there?
On Monday, the day where we had 3 deaths, Pashinyan was largely silent, absolutely silent, I believe. However, the following day, at the sitting of the Armenian government, Pashinyan talked about this issue, and during that, he announced that Armenia was not conducting any negotiations based on the logic of quote-unquote corridors, highlighting that Armenia and Azerbaijan should have customs controls over roads that pass through each other's territories. This highlighted the corridor issue again to me, and I guess the issue or the use of the term corridor seems to not only be semantic, but Azerbaijan is implying that it wants some sort of sovereignty over the transport links. And France's response to this, out of the 3 OSCE Minsk group co-chairs, was very interesting. Last week, they had an interview with, I believe, Azatutsun, and they seem to be the most vocal in support of Armenia against the use of corridor. On July 23, for instance, Jonathan Lacote, the French ambassador, said that the term corridor is not a desired terminology due to the negative connotation associated with the term, specifically bringing up the Polish corridor, which was set up by allies over after the victory of World War I, separating Germany from East Prussia. Benyamin, back to you. What are your thoughts about this disagreement over the term corridor? Azerbaijan seems to be sticking to its guns quite literally on this issue, and to the point of using the military to exert pressure. Is what we have in the November 9th statement a corridor or not, in your opinion?
So I believe that the issue of terms is not the most vital thing here. Because yes, we are very angry against President Aliyev, who is constantly speaking about Zangezur corridor, but I don't believe it. For example, tomorrow Mr. Aliyev will state that sorry, I did mistake. I'm not going to use term of corridor. I will use the term of Zangezur highways or Zangezur roads. We should be very happy, and we should provide connections between Azerbaijan and Nakhichevan Autonomous Republic via Syunik province. Because if you are speaking about control, let's not forget that in the statement of November 10, it's clearly written that the security of the passage of goods from western regions of Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan Autonomous Republic will be protected by Russian border troops. So in any case, Armenia will have reduced sovereignty over these highways or railways in any case, because the security will be protected by Russian border troops, and this is clearly written and stated in the November 10 statement. But from my perspective, even if President Aliyev will drop the term of corridor, providing a railway and highway for Azerbaijan to be connected with Nakhichevan Autonomous Republic via Syunik province is a very dangerous thing for Armenia, and it's even may pose an existential threat to Armenia, because Azerbaijan is demand one railway along the Arax River to pass through the Negri region, and also they demand highway. Most probably they want this highway from Berdor or Lachin to Goris, Sisyan, and from Sisyan to enter Nakhichevan. Even if we don't use the term of corridors, or if Azerbaijan doesn't use the term of corridors, and the security is being provided by Russian border troops, as it stipulated in this November 10th statement, the opening of this one railway and another highway via the Syunik province will mean that in the coming years, Azerbaijan and Turkey will have growing economic influence in the Syunik region, because eventually the part of the cargo traffic, which now fully passes via Georgia from Azerbaijan and Turkey and vice versa, will start to pass from Syunik. It means daily hundreds of trucks and maybe hundreds of trains or wagons full of Azerbaijan, Turkey drivers and etc. will pass through Syunik region, which automatically means economic presence of Azerbaijan in Syunik province. And let's not forget that currently, even according to official statistic, we have only 130,000 people living in entire Syunik region. It's less than any one district in Yerevan. And in its narrowest point, Syunik province now divides Azerbaijan proper from Nakhichevan Autonomous Republic with less than 30 kilometers. So from my point of view, what Armenia should do, Armenia should say that, okay, no one is against opening up communications. Armenia also needs new communication because Armenia needs strong economy. And we all understand that restoration of communications will contribute to Armenian economy. But Armenia should clearly state that we are not going to provide any passages, you may call it corridors, roads, routes, or whatever else from Azerbaijan to Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic via Sunni province. Okay, please use other alternative routes passing through other Armenian provinces to be connected with Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. And this should be clearly stated to all our partners, because all external players, they are interested in restoration of communications. It's not only Russia who is obviously interested, but it's also the European Union, because President of the European Council, Charles Michel, who visited the region on July 17, July 19, he clearly stated that the European Union is interested for stability here, for communications to open up. And even if we look through the statements of US State Department, again, we will see some referring about the need for regional cooperation, etc., etc. So all external players are interested in restoration of communications, which means that there is no need and no possibility for Armenia to say no. We are not going to do that, or we are against it. But what Armenia can and should do, from my perspective, is to clearly state that, okay, we are ready to provide Azerbaijan routes, highway, railways, to be connected with Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, but which will not pass the territory of Sunni province. There are different alternative routes. We have the Razakh, Ijevan, Sevan, Yerevan, Yeras, Nakhchivan route. There could be the Vardenis, Martuni, Yeregnador, Yeras, Nakhchivan route. So there are plenty of alternatives. And if Azerbaijan sticks and continues to demand that no, the route should be exclusively pass or traverse the territory of Sunni province, it only will show their desire to actually increase their economic and maybe later their political influence in the Sunni province. So for me, this is issue not about the issues we are going to call it as a corridor, route, highway, railway. So this is not issue of term. The key for Armenia is to state that we are not going to provide any connections from Azerbaijan to Nakhchivan via Sunni province. We are ready to provide alternative routes, again passing through Armenian territory, which can connect Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. And if Azerbaijan's real goal is not to increase its influence and maybe later even to de facto control Sunni province, he should be happy with alternative routes. And if after several years we will see that cargo and the volume of cargo, volume of traffic is so big that this one railway or one highway passing through other Armenian territory is not enough, okay, in that case we may think about opening the second railway or second highway passing also through Sunni province. So this is my take.
I just want to add one thing on what Benjamin said. I think there's an element here that, as he said, you can call it highway to hell, road to nowhere, bridge to somewhere, to infinity, whatever it is. At the end of the day, it's not going to, I mean, all the points that Benjamin mentioned, I think, are valid and to the point as to that's at the core of the discussion. And one more thing, I think this is the issue of passage between Azerbaijan proper and Nakhchivan. I feel that it is the top priority that Azerbaijan is pushing for currently. I mean, again, what we mentioned about earlier, these border clashes and infiltrations and so on and so forth are a sideshow or a distraction. I feel that what is at the top of the agenda for Azerbaijan is that passageway connection with Nakhchivan.
I also found the idea very interesting that Armenia should reserve the choice of routes to open for Azerbaijan's connectivity with Nakhchivan exclusively to itself, and that if Azerbaijan insists on routes through Syunik specifically, this is going to underscore their ulterior motives towards that province. I have a question for both of you. What is Russia's interest in opening up all these routes within the South Caucasus? Without the routes through Abkhazia, the Russians are still mostly blocked from Armenia and the southern regions.
Okay, as far as I understand Russian positions, they view these routes not routes between Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, and even not routes or communications between Azerbaijan and Turkey. For them, these are the new routes for Russia to be connected both with Turkey and with Iran, not surpassing the Georgian territory. Because currently, Russia theoretically may connect to Turkey via railway using Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway. They have Russia-Baku railway, and their cargo can go to Baku and then via Georgian territory to enter Turkey. But because Russians strongly believe that currently Georgia is under, let's say, direct or indirect control of the United States, they simply want to have alternative railway and highway connections with Turkey and Iran, which will not pass the territory of Georgia. That is why they are telling, okay, we need to enter Azerbaijan, then Armenia, and then via Armenia to Nakhchivan and Iran. And also they say, okay, we want to and reach Turkey via Azerbaijan and Armenia without passing the Georgian territory. But here, what can Armenia to offer to Russia? We all know that we have the Gyumri-Kars railway, which is not operating, but it could be operating. So if Russians really want to have a railway connection with Turkey, not passing the Georgia's territory, there is no need for them to enter to Baku and then go until to Horadiz, then enter Merli, then Nakhichevan, and then from Nakhichevan to Turkey. Their cargo can reach Baku, then from Baku they can come to the Kazakh and then enter Ijevan, because during Soviet times there was a Ijevan-Azerbaijan railway. And from Ijevan they may reach Dilijan, and we have only 30 kilometers of missing link to connect the Dilijan with Vanador, and from Vanador is a railway to Gyumri. So what we can offer to Russia, we can say, okay guys, you want to have railway connection with Turkey without passing Georgian territory, no problem. But it's not the only version of this is to bring your cargo via Sunik province and then enter Nakhchivan and then Turkey. Please bring your cargo to Ijevan and then Dilijan, construct this 30-kilometer missing link between Dilijan and Vanador, and let's not forget that Armenian Railway is under a 30-year concession agreement and it's governed by Russian Railway. And then so you can bring your cargo from Baku to Kazakh, from Kazakh to Ijevan, from Ijevan to Dilijan, from Dilijan to Gyumri, and from Gyumri to Kars. So this also will allow us to somehow convince Russians not to force us to give this railway connection with the Sunik region, because what Azerbaijan and Turkey are telling to Russia, they are telling, look, dear Mr. Putin or dear Kremlin, bring your cargo to Baku, then from Baku along the Arax River they will enter the Merli, then Nakhichevan, and we know that Azerbaijan and Turkey is planning to construct another railway, Kars-Nakhichevan. And from this point of view, they are telling, okay, Russian cargo will come to Baku, then to Merli, then to Nakhichevan, from Nakhichevan to Kars, and from Kars they will be in Turkey. I believe not to be put under the strong Russian pressure, we may say, okay, we fully understand the Russian desire to have a railway connection with Turkey without passing Georgian territory, but again, there is an alternative route, alternative than this Azerbaijan, Merli, Nakhichevan, Turkey, which is Azerbaijan, then Armenia via Kazakh-Ijevan railway from Ijevan to Dilijan, then construct this missing 31-kilometer railway to connect Dilijan with Vanador, and from Vanador there is a railway to Gyumri, and from Gyumri there is a railway to Kars.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Benyamin, before we move off this topic, I'd like to ask you and Asbed Kotchikian whether we can expect this kind of environment long term. So Pashinyan's signing of the November 9 ceasefire statement was justified by the fact that we now have a period of peace. And in fact, ushering a period of peace and prosperity was one of Pashinyan's major campaign promises in the June elections. Yet we are witnessing seemingly constant instability around all the border regions. What was interesting is in one of your many interviews over the past 2 weeks, which I really love seeing, you talked about quote-unquote gray zones, which can be defined for our listeners as the space between peace and war in which state and non-state actors engage in competition. And you cautioned about the threat of many parts of Armenia actually having this category for the near and midterm. Can you talk a little bit more about the possibility of this happening?
I'm afraid that this is a real possibility, and frankly speaking, part of our territory is already in the gray zone. In recent years, Asbed probably know better, having been in the United States. Only in the United States, several academic publications have been published about the green zone, but also Russians are very active, at least Russian military strategies, to define what is gray zone is, how the state actors can act in the gray zones, how can they use gray zones to advance their own national interests. But frankly speaking, for example, let's take the Sunni province. Currently, if you are traveling from Goris to Kapan, the two biggest cities of Sunni province, you will see 3 troops and 3 flags. Armenian troops, Armenian flag, Azerbaijani troops, Azerbaijani flags, Russian troops, Russian flag. This is a classic situation of gray zone when there are some actions, it's not a large-scale war, but also there is no peace. And the same now Azerbaijan is creating in the Armenian province, in Ararat province, because daily there are shootings, unfortunately some casualties, and etc. etc. And my understanding is that as far as Azerbaijan will not give what Armenia will not give to Azerbaijan what it wants, in the short-term perspective again, to recognize that what was Soviet Azerbaijan is the current Azerbaijan. which means recognizing the Azerbaijani territorial integrity within Soviet Azerbaijan borders first, and second, to provide these connections, routes, corridors, or whatever we may term them, from Azerbaijan to Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic via Sunni province. Azerbaijan is going to continue this tactic. And another issue, from long-term perspective, I cannot exclude that long-term goal of Azerbaijan is to send a clear message to this population living in these border provinces of Armenia that, look guys, even your basic security is not guaranteed here. We all know that there are different requirements for human beings, starting from security, and there's a high-level requirements of human rights, cultural development, etc., etc. But basically, it's physical security. So they are sending the clear message to the population living in Armenian border provinces. Look, guys, even your basic physical security is not guaranteed, which means that even for you, this can be okay because you are in your middle ages, you are not a mobile person, you don't want to leave the graveyard or your fathers or grandfather. But please think about your children or about your young guide, your students, etc. Do you believe that these border provinces are the best way for them to live when they even don't have the basic physical security? And thus, in the long term, I believe they are trying to accelerate the immigration from these border provinces either to Yerevan or outside of Armenia. And this is also one of the components of gray zone, like to force or to trigger the migration of population. So I'm afraid that for at least in if not in foreseeable future, for at least in the short-term perspective for months or even years, because even if, God forbid, Armenia will recognize the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan within Soviet Azerbaijan borders, Armenia will provide these routes or corridors from Azerbaijan to Nakhchivan via Sunni province, I don't think that Azerbaijan and Turkey will stop. So, frankly speaking, my understanding is that we, as a state and as a society, should get used that for in upcoming years we will live in this gray zone situation. Of course, it's not very pleasant, but also it's not a disaster. So we have many states which are, or territories which are currently living in such conditions. So our state should be prepared that yes, Azerbaijan and Turkey will do everything to transform Armenia or at least part of Armenia into gray zone. But it does not mean that we have to stop to do everything and think about leaving Armenia. Simply, the state and society should be prepared to live and overcome the problems of the gray zone. Because frankly speaking, I don't see any scenario in which either Armenia or Russia or France can fully force Azerbaijan and Turkey to stop this gray zone tactic.
So, Benyamin, it doesn't sound like you believe that a peace treaty will bring real peace to Armenia.
Yeah, I believe that even if peace treaty will be signed with fully accepting Azerbaijan all demands, because I believe that Azerbaijan will sign peace treaty only if all its demands will be satisfied. But even in that case, Azerbaijan and Turkey will continue to put pressure on Armenian border provinces, trying to make these provinces less and less populated.
Asbed?
You know, this idea of gray zones and so on, it's an extension of the idea in international relations about positive peace versus negative peace, where negative peace is the absence of war, and positive peace is not just the absence of war, but also there's a lot of cooperation in international relations among countries and so on. So I think extension of this or a continuation of this and what Benjamin talked about gray zones and so on, it's no peace, no war kind of a situation. But I would say it is more and more likely to have a negative peace rather than positive peace, even though in terms of the November 9 agreement calls for longer cooperation, the opening of borders and communication networks and so on and so forth. So this is one of the things we have to also keep in mind. It's about the constant fear. This is also a manifestation. It's a manifestation of a psychological warfare, right? It's about, what Benjamin was talking about. It's like constantly you're in a constant state of war.
Absolutely.
How would people deal with that? I remember 10 years ago, for instance, you would go to Karabakh and Stepanakert, you would see people, the number of births going up. It would be interesting because people were positive about the future. Now, even those who actually haven't left, didn't lose their homes, let's say in Stepanakert, one of the key things is that what would the future bring? This is Karabakh, but let alone now think about in Syunik, right? In Gerarkunik, in other places. These are all components to keep in mind.
Benyamin, what do you think the role of Turkey is in the region since the war? With the signing of the Shushi Declaration with Azerbaijan and Pakistan, they seem to be cementing their presence. Do you think they're trying to muscle Russia out of the region?
I don't exclude that Turkey now thinks about strengthening its position, but frankly speaking, I'm not sure that the results of the Karabakh War resulted in significant increase of Turkey's presence, because Turkey was very influential in Georgia long before the Karabakh War, and Turkey-Azerbaijan connections, especially in military fields, they started in late 1990s, early 2000s. So if we take into account the positions of external players, especially Russia and Turkey, like September 26, 2020, and today is August 2nd, 2021, I believe that Russia has increased much more, has increased its position in South Caucasus than Turkey. Because first, Russia has much more military presence in Armenia than before the war. Russian troops are deployed in Karabakh also, and before the war there was zero Russian troops in Karabakh. Okay, what achieved Turkey? Yes, now the significant part of Azerbaijani society is fond of Turkey because they strongly believe that only through Erdogan's active support and active actions they could take back some territories. But also, let's not forget that I don't believe that Mr. Aliyev is ready to become the de facto governor of another Turkish province. I don't think that this is a future for which Mr. Aliyev is dreaming. So yes, he will meet with President Erdogan, they will sign declarations, but I don't think that in reality Aliyev is interested to see more and more growing Turkish influence in Azerbaijan, because he understands that at the end of the day, he's not the best partner for President Erdogan. And also, let's not forget that in 2023, President Erdogan has to pass his presidential elections, and given the dismay situation of Turkish economy, no one can argue that Erdogan will stay in power. So let's see. Yes, Turkey is interested to strengthen these positions in South Caucasus more, but again, I believe that Russia came out much more stronger in the South Caucasus after the Karabakh War than Turkey, and let's see how Turkey can strengthen its position more. In any case, I don't think that at least President Aliyev is ready to transform Azerbaijan into another Turkish province.
All right. This past week, likely incoming Speaker of the Parliament, Alen Simonian, announced that Civil Contract intends to initiate a fact-finding commission. Most likely, this commission will be held under the auspices of the Parliament's Standing Committee on Defense and Security. Simonian noted that they want to include both parliamentary as well as extra-parliamentary parties that didn't clear the threshold, and the opposition has voiced many concerns that the party that lost the war cannot investigate itself and has demanded to chair the commission. Benyamin, you are one of the co-authors of Armeniacommission.org, which is essentially a call to the Armenian government to establish a fact-finding commission to investigate the causes and the results of the war in Artsakh in 2020 in order to learn from the mistake made over the long and short term. You know, just as an aside, a couple of days ago, we talked to the lead author of the Simon Sarajian and co-authors Arthur Martirosyan and Benyamin Poghosyan for a podcast we just published on our channels. What are your thoughts about Alen Simonian's proposal, and what challenges does it face?
Definitely, after any disaster, and especially such disaster which we experienced in 2020, which was the worst defeat for our nations in the last century, at least starting from 1920 Armenia-Turkey War and defeat in Armenia-Turkey War, definitely all needs a lesson learned. That is why the idea of fact-finding commission is a natural one and objective one.
Yeah.
However, in the current politicized situation in Armenia, when government accuses the opposition or current opposition, or government accuses the former authorities for the defeat, telling that, okay, for last 20 or 30 or 25 years, they didn't do anything for army. Even some argue that we even had until zero army. That's why we lost the war. In current situation, and when there are a lot of opposition figures who are clearly stating that this was an agreed defeat, that is not only was a defeat due to some mistakes or etc., but it was an agreed defeat, which means that there was a case of high treason. In such situation, to have the commission in parliament, which is a political body, and is currently controlled by government, I don't think it's a right way to move forward, and definitely whatever this commission may find, these findings will not be trustworthy for at least part of society, or let's put this way, for at least the intellectual part of society who have a critical thinking. Because obviously when officially the government is telling that, okay, the key persons who should be blamed for this defeat they are the previous authorities because they didn't pay much attention to army, they plundered army, they robbed state, etc., etc., etc. If are the same people will be in charge of this investigation, it will be very, very difficult to believe that there could be any real objective investigation. And by the way,
Yeah.
vice versa, if as a result of this June 20 early parliamentary elections, for example, the Armenian alliance took the majority, and he in the parliament established this fact-finding commission, the same will be true also at that time, because it will be very difficult to perceive that this commission will also look through the mistakes which have been taken place before 2018, both in negotiations, in army construction, or etc., etc. So I'm afraid that currently, because everything is very politicized, I don't think that the parliamentary fact-finding commission is the right way to do that. Especially we have the example, the civic contract party established the fact-finding commission to explore the April 2016 defeat, which they call the strategic or terrible defeat, while Armenia lost only several square kilometers. And this commission ended by nothing, frankly speaking. The only one several publicly stated conclusions was the statement by Benyamin Poghosyan. At that time he was a chairman of this Parliament Security and Defense Commission. That, for example, one of the main people who should be blamed for this defeat was Arpak Davtyan. But then Arpak Davtyan twice was appointed as the Chief General Staff of Armenian Army. First, immediately after the revolution, and then in March or April 2021. So, unfortunately, we also have the example of this fact-finding commission, which, frankly speaking, did nothing, and it was purely political spectacle. So I'm afraid that regardless of who will be the members of commissions and etc., any commission in parliament in current polarized way, it will be more about political spectacle, about changing the blames, about political actions, than about real serious work to understand why we suffered this catastrophic defeat. Because what happened to Armenian nation, not only to the Republic of Armenia, the Republic of Artsakh, but Armenia as a nation, during these 44 days, this was a really catastrophe. And I'm afraid that for coming decades, we will not be able to overcome or fully overcome these terrible implications of the war.
I think one of the things about this is, and Benjamin alluded to it as well, is that, previously when the parliament in the last 2 years or so, when they decided to form a commission to study the April 2016 war and so on, I think this is more of a showmanship, right? To show, oh, look, we're holding ourselves accountable. And it wasn't just about politically motivated, about the, parliamentary commissions about the 2016 war, and so on and so forth. And I think it's more about form rather than substance. It's more about spectacle rather than having anything substance. And I do share Benjamin's concern that this could actually pour gasoline on water on fire.
Okay, Asbed, let me ask you then, what should we watch for as signs of success or failure of Simonian's initiative? How do we know that this commission is doing something good or not working as intended?
Well, I mean,
or do we wait until the end and say it was what it was a show, it was a failure, whatever?
By nature, I'm someone who would always give people the benefit of a doubt. That's one thing. But then it also depends on the composition of the commission, right? It also depends on how open the hearings and the processes are going. It also matters how eventually it can be politicized and so on and so forth. Again, it's all about the process. But overall, I think the need to do this and the way it's being done itself, it puts it suspect as to how it's going to go. But as I said, I am willing to give it the benefit of a doubt.
Well, okay. It sounds like this is going to be a topic for some time to come. Moving forward, today was the first sitting of the 8th Parliament. Benjamin, did you follow it? Do you have any impressions you'd like to share?
The first day started, as was supposed, by some fighting between Armenian alliance and civic contract MPs regarding the detainment of two former mayors of cities of Syunik province. More precisely, one of them was a former mayor of Mevri, because they have been elected as MPs, and according to constitution, member of parliaments can be detained only through the agreement of the National Assembly. So the Armenian alliance, they were demanding that these MPs should be freed. They should come to the parliament, and then the prosecutor general should enter the new parliament and there should be clear vote on parliament to deprive them from their ability not to be detained. And then civic contract told no, because criminal cases had been launched before the elections, and these people have been detained or arrested before the parliament convened, so there is no need for do that. But at the end of the day, Alen Simonian was elected as a chairman of the parliament. By the way, two opposition blocs they boycotted the election, so Alen Simonian was elected only by the 71 members of civic contract party. So yes, it's obviously there will be tough days in parliament, but in any case, because civic contract enjoys almost constitutional majority, he has 71 MPs from 107. It will be very difficult for opposition to really change anything. They can criticize, they can delay, they can put psychological pressure on a civic contract party, but at the end of the day, in the parliaments, everything is being decided by votes. And if you have 71 votes from 107, it's very difficult to prevent anything which you want to do.
Asbed, what are your thoughts about
Yeah,
today?
yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting. If anything, actually, in terms of percentages, it hasn't changed much. The role, the control of my step or the ruling factor, Pashinyan's faction of the parliament. And it is quite interesting when the Central Electoral Committee Commission, when they announced the list of the people who were going to be entering the parliament, they're ratifying them. It was interesting to see some of the names who were accepted or who were elected. People like Ararat Mirzoyan, for instance, who are not who didn't take their oath in that, which also assumes that they're being groomed or they being sort of set up for a position, executive government or what in
Right.
the executive branch or not. So I would like to see, actually, it would be quite interesting to see who will the opposition deputy speaker of the House be, or the deputy speaker of the House from the opposition would be, and to what extent they will have to work in close sort of quarters with them. Because at the end of the day, the presidium, if you want to call it, to use a Soviet era time, this is the presidium, right? The body that runs the parliament,
Yes.
the speaker of the House with the deputy speakers. They will have to meet, they will have to synergize, they will have to set up a common agenda items and so on and so forth. So my guess would be someone from Hayastan Alliance, Hayastan Dashing, Armenia Alliance, and it would be quite interesting to see the dynamic in there. But I think the next week or so, things will clarify more. And from what I have seen also is that at this point, some of the ministries or some of the proposed ministers, cabinet members, are new faces. Probably Pashinyan is also careful not to bring in the old faces because they polarize a lot, including people like Aray Karuchunyan, the former minister of education, culture, and blah, 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 the mega ministry, let's call it. So it's quite interesting to see the new faces and to what extent they will actually be scrutinized or be able to push the agenda forward, while at the same time doing some decent administrative jobs.
Asbed, do you expect to see any ministries led by non-civil contract members?
That's a very good question. Non-civil contract members, absolutely. Yes, I will. I think there would be people who might end up being sympathizers or professionals and or reliable enough by civil contract to be
I guess I
given
really
a
meant from
ministry.
the parliamentary opposition, because there are
Oh
many.
no, 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 definitely not. I
Mhm.
mean, there are discussions about, again, hearsay. And Benjamin, you can correct me. I don't like to rely on gossip, but there are discussions about, for instance, having a new Minister of Justice, Karen Andreasyan, who's not a member, the former ombudsman, right? Or,
Yeah.
for instance, there's a discussion of possibility of forming a new Ministry of Interior, who might be headed by the current director of the Migration Department,
Hmm.
for instance, who's also not a civil contract members. So I think that's the extent that they would go to in terms of giving positions to non-civil contract members. But I wouldn't be surprised for showmanship as well. They might appoint people from an extra parliamentary members, people like someone from Harabeduchun party.
Yeah.
So
Benjamin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I believe quite possible that some non-party members will be appointed, but who are affiliated with Pashinyan or have some loyalty at least. And also, I don't exclude that some pro-Pashinyan parties, which didn't overcome the threshold, some representative can be appointed. I mean, the Republic Arab Party, head by Aram Sargsyan, the brother of killed Prime Minister. It will
Right,
be a
exactly.
party for Republic, led by Arman Babacanyan, another former member of parliament.
Sanasaryan as well, right?
Yes, the David Sanasaryan, which established its own party again.
There were almost a dozen of these parties.
Yes, but all they were, let's say, they were the part of this movement which brought Pashinyan into the power in 2018. So even if they are officially, they are established different parties, but most of these parties are, if not one man, at least 10 or 20 man parties.
Mhm.
So it's very difficult to say that it will be some multi-party government.
Exactly.
Benjamin, one of the things I'm thinking out loud here, and it would be interesting to get your perspective as well, is that if that's the case, and you pointed it out, that most of these parties were part of the larger coalition that brought Pashinyan to power. Sanasaryan was one of the key figures in Merji, Kailara
Yes,
Merji
reject Serge,
Sergin and so on.
whatever else, yes.
Yeah, and reject Serge kind of a thing. But that raises an interesting question as to, conspiracy theories abound. Some people might say, aha, see, the reason why we ended up having so many political parties in this election is that it was an attempt by Pashinyan to diversify, to weaken the opposition and so on and so forth. And now that the results are in, he's just trying to bring them back to his fold or trying to cooperate with them. I think again, that's the conspiracy theory. I don't subscribe to it. I think what's happening is that Pashinyan took advantage of the fact that there's such a fragmented political field during the election, and by having meetings with the extra parliamentary political parties, he's trying to show that, look, I am willing to work with others. But obviously, it works both ways, right? If he might be willing to work with others, but others might not be willing to work with him. And in this case, it's his old comrades in arms, as Benjamin mentioned, that might be willing to get positions, jobs, or any kind of a ministry or sub-ministry level positions.
And one interesting thing is that mainly this extra parliamentary opposition, they are mainly anti-Russia parties or anti-Russia political actors, because we see that Pashinyan had several meetings with Arman Babacanyan, with Levon Shirinyan, then with Arman Babacanyan, and all these guys, they are doing the 24/7 anti-Russia propaganda in Armenia, calling that Russia is a traitor, Russia is not worse as Turkey, it is the same as Turkey, it should be kicked out of Armenia,
Right.
etc., etc. So it's interesting to see how Moscow sees all this, that from one point of view, Pashinyan asks or approaches Moscow, telling Kremlin that please
I
send
wouldn't
your
give him too
border
much
troops.
credit, by the way, Benjamin. I wouldn't give too much credit to Pashinyan about this, but he might be thinking, good cop, bad cop strategy. That, oh, look, I'm loyal to Russia, but there are people that I had to bring in who are not pro-Russia. So I wouldn't give that much credit for this kind of a thought, but that might also be
Yes,
a
I agree,
reflection.
because there is some interesting dichotomy here, because Pashinyan asked Russia to send border troops along entire Armenia-Azerbaijan border, and we all understand that if Russia implements this request, it will be in favor of not only the Republic of Armenia or in favor of these people who live in there, because their security will be protected, but also it will be in favor of Mr. Pashinyan, because he will say, okay, at least I solved this security problem. Russian troops are here, Azerbaijanis are not shooting, people are not dying,
Right.
soldiers are not dying, people can go and harvest their fruits or etc. etc. So from one point of view, he's doing this, asking Russia to do a favor to Armenia and also to do personally favor to him. And from another point of view, all his close friends who are not part of government, but obviously he has some connection with them, I mean both political and also expert circles, they are actively triggering anti-Russia sentiment in Armenian society. And we all understand that in the long run, these anti-Russian sentiments may create some problems for Russia. Theoretically, at least may. And it's interesting to see how Russia perceives it. That from one point of view, Pashinyan is thanking Mr. Putin almost on daily basis, speaking about Russian border troops, asking Russia to do this, that, some hinting that, okay, I'm ready to do whatever Russia wants. And from another point of view, the people very close to him, and obviously if he would like, he could make them to stop, or at least to decrease their level of anti-Russian activities. He's not doing that. So let's see how Kremlin views all this.
Well, we'll be watching and talking about all this stuff in the coming weeks. There's never an end to all the things we can talk about, but for now, we'll leave it here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Asbed Kotchikian.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
That concludes our program for this Week in Review episode. We hope it has helped your understanding of some of the issues from the previous week. We look forward to your feedback and your suggestions for issues to cover in greater depth. Contact us on our website at groong.org or on our Facebook page ANN-Groong or in our Facebook group Groong-Armenian News Network. Special thanks to Laura Osborne for providing the music for our podcast. On behalf of everyone in this episode, we wish you a good week. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels, like our pages, and follow us on social media. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.